Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, and kind of like contract extensions, because I kind of asked the question, and I was kind of surprised by the outcome of, who you would rather extend, who do you kind of believe in long term. But I wanted to ask you, like, do you think they get contract extensions this summer, and what do you think a ballpark for both of these guys could possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a little bit lower on thinking it will get done in terms of I really felt like Jalen Duren is the more like he's interesting in terms of like the center market is fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
Anthony. I always bring this up. If I'm Jalen Duren, I say Nick Claxton got $25 million a year and I'm better than Nick Claxton. And if I'm the Pistons, I say, well, Zubats is at like $20 million a year and you're not better than him. And so it's just a very interesting market with Jalen Duren. I know I've gotten a lot of pushback from people. I almost feel like I've misrepresented my own position on this. I feel like a lot of people, maybe I said it, have said that like I'm like Asar and Duren can't survive together for. That's not necessarily like, again, if I said that, I misrepresented my own opinion. I think it's fair to consider that though, Anthony. Like I do think there should be questions. Like that's two complete non-shooters. Do you really think you're going to win at the highest level with those two guys? And so I think it's fair to at least wonder. And then I know people have thrown back like net ratings and stuff like that. Here's the thing I'll throw at you, Anthony. You know who has the best two lineup net rating with 500 plus minutes this season for the Pistons?
It's probably non-shooters.
It is Malik Beasley and Tobias Harris. And so you want to know where that duo ranks in terms of defensive rating between two-man lineups on the Detroit Pistons this year with 500 plus minutes?
Are they in the top five?
They are number 2,
Oh, wow.
Anthony. So my only point is here, it's not to discredit that the net rating for Asar and Jalen Duren is good. I'm not trying to do that. I think me bringing up some of the offensive areas of the floor and stuff like that is also fair. I think it's fair to bring up both sides. All I want to point out is it's not always like the end all be all, right? Like just because Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley are second on the team in defensive rating whenever you look at two-man lineups doesn't mean the Pistons should build their defensive identity around Tobias Harris and Malik Beasley, right? So that's my only kind of pushback whenever we are. Listen, the Knicks community's doing it right now with Karl Anthony Towns. I literally got off Twitter before we started recording, and I see people trying to like justify Karl Anthony Towns' defense with like some defensive metric stuff, and I'm just like, I watched the game last night. I saw how limited what he was doing was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so like that's my only point with that. And my only point with Duren and Asar is you're gonna commit to Asar. Like he is gonna be awesome. If they're 100% sure that those two guys can be together, then great. But if there are questions, I think it's at least part of the equation when you look at a Duren extension. Sorry, that was a long. I needed an opportunity to get some of those thoughts off my chest, and your podcast got it. I apologize.
Oh no, it's all good. We love it here. We love here next. I did see the pushback with Pistons fans in the podcast you did with Sam, and like what do you mean they can't play together? But I think the points that you guys have made, especially Sam's been like kind of like hitting his hand on the table with like the spacing thing, and I do agree with him. If neither of them develop a jump shot, then it does become pretty difficult for both of them to space the floor. I think the only thing I would say with that is like any offer you may give Duren may kind of not be in a positive way. Like if you offered him, let's just say 4 for 80, like he might kind of feel some type of way and just go into restricted free agency. I'd love Duren for 4 for 80 if I'm being honest, because I think it's budget. You mentioned a Nick Claxton. Like if Duren was on $100 million contract, then I know the cap space is going up. A lot of people have pointed out saying like we could possibly find a guy like a Duren that's a rim runner and a lob threat and can protect the paint a little bit. But I think the contract extensions get a little. It's a difficult conversation because all these Pistons fans want to keep everyone on the roster together and not let any of them go, and that's that's what happens when these rookie contracts kind of expire, and then you want to get good, and everyone wants they want to keep their whole core but add like a Nasri and not give up anybody. It's just you have to make some difficult decisions in that way. But
I mean, we're not very. I was thinking about this before we recorded because I knew we were going to get into this conversation. This was the big complaint about the draft of Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland. Was like, okay, these guys are interesting, but none of them are proven floor spacers or shooters. J.I. has gotten there. Like, it was a 30-game sample, but he was over 40%. Asar and Duren are complete non-shooters. And I think that's the other important thing, Anthony, is there is a difference between non-shooters and bad shooters, or guys that are shooting 30%, 33% from three, but still get guarded and have gravity, right? Like, there's major differences there. And right now, with the way Holland's rookie year went as well, this will come into play with one of the guys we're going to talk about, one of the draft prospects we're going to talk about later also. You have three complete non-shooters. Now, again, I don't want to just play this side of it because now I feel like I'm getting pegged as like Duren and Asar can never play together, trade Duren. I don't want to be that guy. I just want to bring it up as a possible outcome if they commit to both. If you believe that Asar is eventually going to shoot, then this becomes way less of an issue. Maybe you believe in the creativity of the Pistons coaching staff in figuring it out offensively with two non-shooters. I would listen to that. I'll listen to all of those. All I want to do is bring the context to the conversation that in a Jalen Duren extension, I think this is something you have to consider because next summer, you know what we're going to be talking about, Anthony? An Asar Thompson extension. And so if that's coming 12 months from now, I think it's at least part of the equation. Maybe you decide it doesn't matter. You're 100% sure Duren and Asar can play together. We're going to pay Duren what it's worth. All I'm saying is, for me, it would be part of the calculation.
I just haven't seen enough to give him big money. Like, first 25 games of the season, I was on his ass, and I'll be I will be very transparent. If you play bad, I'll let you know you're playing bad. You play good, I'll give you praise. I thought the last 40 or 50 games, even in the playoffs, I thought he adapted really well from a game-to-game basis. He's still learning. He's still learning JB's system. Like, when he gets, 3 seconds in the lane without guarding, like, JB claps. Like, they clap when they get those because that's something he teaches. But, I mean, I think the Duren conversation is really interesting. Your star point, I think, is valid because you have to make a decision on all of these guys. I just kind of wonder, like, what the market for a Duren is. And, if it kind of gets into the 20, 25, $26 million range, then I think you kind of have those conversations of him possibly not being a non-shooter. Like, I see him working on 15-footers when I go to Pistons games, but, like, the coaching staff has never really, explored that. I thought, maybe last couple of games of the season, they kind of want to explore him, developing a jump shot or a mid-range jump shot. Maybe it's still a work in progress. Maybe he wants to develop a little bit more. Because, I mean, if he adds like a good 12 to 15 foot elbow jump shot, that opens up his game completely.
And that's another great point. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 3-point jumper. Maybe it's simply like Asar can do more on the ball stuff, because now if Asar is operating on the ball and he's operating ball screens with Jalen Duren, well, then their floor spacing doesn't matter because they're in the action. I think where this showed up in the Knicks game was because they were both operating off the ball, because the Pistons wanted to attack who? Jalen Brunson. Well, Brunson wasn't guarding either of those guys, so they were bringing Brunson into the action with Malik or Tim or whoever, and then now you had Asar and Jalen Duren both off the ball. Now, that's a very specific playoff scenario, but like, it is just something to consider. I think the biggest net rating positive for these two guys isn't the 2-man lineup data, Anthony. It's the 5-man lineup data. So if you look at the regular season 5-player lineups with a minimum of 50 minutes, because if you do too many minutes, like you get to like 3 lineups, right? But they have the top net rating. In that lineup, it's with 2 shooters, Hardaway and Beasley plus Schroeder. They have the 3rd net rating with the 2 shooters and Cade Cunningham. And they have the 5th best net rating with the starting lineup we saw for the majority of the year. I think that is the bigger argument in terms of regular season success with those 2 guys, is actually that in these 5-player lineups, they had some of the best lineups. And so I don't think it's a it can't happen. I just think it's an equation. I think I've landed in the, like, if he got whatever 4 for 100 or something, I think that's probably the happy medium that I've landed on, Anthony. Anything over that, I'm starting to get nervous. If you could get under that, then I think it's a really good number. I'm also like workshopping, like, do you want to pay, like, how is it worked paying centers in this range? Or are you better off either paying a big time center like Jokic, which obviously there's very few of, or just like finagling the center position, getting a variety of centers, go 3 deep at better contracts, like what, just from a team, not even a Piston specific idea, Anthony, just in general, an NBA idea, and team building can be different across the board. Is there an argument to like, just flat out don't pay centers in this range of money? Has that always worked? It'd be interesting I haven't workshopped it enough to give a solid opinion on it yet.
So I was looking back. The last center that the Pistons paid was Andre Drummond. They gave him 5 for 125. That was a long time ago. I think if you can keep Duren, like, 100 million, under 100 million, I kind of bank on possibly the age, because he's only 21 years old.
Great point.
And maybe he can keep developing. I don't know. Some people think he's a lost cause just because there are certain things defensively that he still constantly does, especially with like his hips not being fully squared up when he is defending. There's little things you can nitpick here and there, but it'll be an interesting conversation. He's the one player where I think more Pistons fans are open to extending. Like, what are you feeling? Because like you look at some guards like in his class, like I'll use Jalen Suggs for an example. Like he got paid, but Jalen Suggs is a really good defender, but he's not really known as a shooter. With Ivey, like, do you think the money could be possibly less with the injury, or do you think that doesn't really go into effect at all?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that the injury in itself is going to affect the number. I think the fact he only played 30 games is the thing here. I was the data collection guy all year for this 24-25 Pistons season. And since the season's been over, I've said, like, when people have asked me, like, what's the most exciting thing about the season? What's the most disappointing thing about the season? To me, the most disappointing thing is we only saw Jaden Ivey for 30 games, and we didn't see him in these high leverage situations during the regular season. We didn't see him in the 6 games of the playoffs. And so the data collection on him is just different, and I always bring it up. I would guess you could win a lot of money, trying to bet people what Jaden Ivey shot from 40% or shot from 3 this season at 40.9%. Maybe not Pistons fans, but people outside of the Pistons fan base. And it was on 5 attempts as well, And so like we saw growth with the jumper, which is super important as we've been talking about here. So my bigger thing with J.I. is, like, I feel like I kind of know who Jalen Duren is as a player. And yes, there's still potential upside because he's so young and all of that. With Jay and what his role is going to be, most specifically with Duren. I think I know what his role is going to be. And then it's just like, okay, what is that worth? How much do we believe in that? How does it work within our organization? All of that. With Jaden Ivey, Anthony, you could tell me he ends up the Robin to Cade's Batman, and I see that world. And you could tell me he ends up as the 6th man in the Benedict Mathurin role of the Indiana Pacers, and I would believe that as well. The issue with that is why I have a hard time with the number, because what you pay that guy has a very high variance here. And if you pay Jaden Ivey like he could be a number 2 option and he becomes a 6th man, that's a valuable role, but that's not a very valuable contract. It's probably a negative contract. And so that's why I get a little bit nervous with what the number for J.I. is.
Yeah, I think you have a great point. I'm with you. I think I know what Duren is going to be in the NBA. I think he's obviously still going to develop, but I have a pretty good understanding of like what I think he could possibly be if he fully hits his ceiling and if he just kind of, flattens out.
Like, we would agree, he's probably never like the 3rd option on your team, right? Like he's this rim running, rim finishing, elite offensive rebounding. Like, the upside is probably the defense, right? Like, if the defense continues to take steps and really becomes a positive, like, that's what it is. But he's not going to be Jokic. He's not going to be Şengün. He's not going to be Sabonis in terms of like running offense through him in that way. I don't think. Maybe some people still believe that in him, but I don't think he's like that type of focal point of your offense. And that's what I mean, like where you can kind of see what his role is going to be.
Yeah.
Hold on. Nobody's Jokic. Sorry, that was stupid. Nobody's Jokic. That's not even fair to bring up.
Yeah. You with Duren, you kind of have a pretty good understanding of like what he could possibly be. Like, does he get better in DHO situations?
Yeah, that's true.
So. Like, he's a pretty good passer.
Yep.
But I don't think he's gonna take like a propel from like you mentioned like offensively like a Şengün. Like Sengun's offense, he's very, very polished. His footwork is great. I think Duren still has room to develop in the post and as a passer and a defender. With Jaden Ivey, my thing with Jaden Ivey is I think he's had the toughest road out of anyone that has been drafted. I mean, only got to play with K 12 games his rookie season. Then he had the Monty Williams experience being benched for Killian Hayes. And then he's playing the best ball of his career under JB. And then he gets injured. So it's like, I just don't know if he can actually be that Robin, or to your point, is he a sixth man? And I think paying him can get a little tricky. Like, are you paying him 25, 26, 27 million, a year, kind of banking on that potential? And if he doesn't hit that potential that you think he is as a number 2 option, and he's just the sixth man, and that contract might be a little bit more difficult to move in the future.
That's what, and to be clear, like, I'm always on the low end of these things, Anthony. Like, I just have this fear. Like, I have this fear of, okay, you end up in cap hell because you've paid out these contracts and all of that. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around the cap going up and what percentage. I always try to use the non-tax MLE as like a gauge for things in terms of what this means. I think for both of these guys, I would love to get them both in the low 20s, like anywhere from 20 to 25. I'm signing right now. Like I'm game. Let's do it. As soon as you get to 25, then I start to be like, man, like, okay, J.I.'s had some good play, but if he ends up being a 6 man, like that's more than Malik Monk money, who's probably the best 6 man for me as from a guard in the NBA. Like, okay, is that going to be okay? Or does that end up being a negative contract? How does that work in terms of the Pistons then trying to acquire the second star? Because if he's not the second star, if Ron's not the second star, if Asar's not a second scoring option, I think Asar's going to be awesome. I don't know if he's the second scoring option. He may be the second best player someday. It's just like, that's what I worry about. The last 5 years, Anthony, we've lived in this world of this team who was rebuilding, but didn't have that much like flexibility with some things, specifically the draft pick. They did have cap space. Now they finally have the draft capital back. And I'm terrified that all of a sudden they lose the cap flexibility because they sign these guys to crazy contracts. I don't think Trajan will. My point is, I just wonder if these guys would just rather bet on themselves, right? Like if I'm Jalen Duren, I would say no, like legit, like that's the side I'm on. I would say, I am better than that. I'm going to go prove it. And I'm going to earn more than 22 to 25 a year. If I'm Jaden Ivey, I think I might say the same thing. I play 82 games next year. I'm going to score 20 a game, shoot 38% from 3, and I'm going to be worth more than 22 a year. So that's why I have a hard time, is because I don't necessarily see it from the player's side in terms of taking on these contracts and signing them.
Yeah, I know Trajan had said in his presser that we'll talk to them this summer about it. From a team aspect, like if you can get them at around 20 to 23 million, then you do that all day. And
yes.
You don't even think about it, because those contracts will probably be the best contracts in the NBA. The way that all these players are getting paid now, like even like a 6th, 7th, or 8th man on the bench is getting 20 million a year. So if you could get those guys on a team-friendly deal and keep building that way, I think from an organizational standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. From a player standpoint, you're 100% right. Those players, they want to get 30 million. They want to get 35 million. They don't want to, only make, 15 to 20 million or something like that. But it's going to be difficult with all these extensions looming over them with Duren and Ivey. And you touched on Asar next season, which I think Asar, to me, you might get more than both of these guys, in my opinion.